medically fragile medical director. She is board certified in both general pediatrics and allergy and immunology after her tenure with George Washington University for her schooling. Her really feeling on being a pediatrician, and I quote her as a pediatrician, I see my role as an advocate for the well-being of children. Dr. Moreno, we're so happy to have you on with us tonight. Now we have Dr. Patrice Reeves-Bright. She is the medical director for Fidelis Care for Children's Behavioral Health. She has over 20 years as a board certified child psychiatrist, so we're really excited to have you here. She had joined Fidelis Care as the Children's Behavioral Health Medical Director in mid-2018. We also have our own MD, Amani Messiah Degum, and I always screw up your name, Amani, so I'm going to apologize. Following her medical degree, she has continued her postgraduate studies at Columbia University Public Health with a focus on environmental sciences. She's held several medical and paramedical academic positions at Columbia University. And others, and in addition to being an active participant in several child and school health steering committees, she is an advisor to her county health department. She is also, most importantly, I will say, our wellness coordinator, and she really works very hard on behalf of PTA to make sure all of our children, we get the education information to all of our children. I'm going to turn things over to Amani to be our moderator. I'm going to mute myself. I want to thank everybody again for tuning in. Again, use that chat box for questions, and Amani, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Kyle, for the introduction. And I want to thank Dr. Reeves-Bright and Dr. Moreno for taking the time to be with us this evening. We really appreciate your being with us tonight. Obviously, parents look forward to the school year starting. So do children and families. And this school year has brought some concerns before school reopening and a fear of a repeat of the last few months of the last school year. Hence our conversation and discussion today will probably focus mostly on these concerns and issues that families face at the beginning of this fall. So our first question, I'm going to ask both of you to respond to this if you may. What can parents and families do to help explain to their children, especially the younger ones, why hand washing is very important and why they need to wear masks?
I can start. So I want to say thank you for having me. The mother of 3 children, I can understand that with all age groups. I have a 5-year-old and 2 preteens. But we want the idea that it just helps keep us healthy. And if we can pass that message along to our children, washing hands just cleans the germs, make sure that you're healthy, and to make it part of the routine, especially now, so that they're used to that. And this is something they do with every time they come back indoors from being outdoors, when they get into school. It's just part of their routine. And even before this pre-COVID era, we were always encouraging washing your hands. We just know much more of the importance of that right now.
Dr. Reeves?
I would just echo what Dr. Moreno said. Hand washing has been such a big part of maintaining your health and wellness, your physical health for such a long time. We've been instructing kids to sing the birthday song while they're washing their hands for probably decades. I think that it becoming part of your daily routine, and kids becoming very comfortable doing it frequently and consistently is so important right now.
Wonderful. And Kyle will ask the next question.
Sure, and we just did get a follow-up question in the chat box. Are there ways to get kids to wear their masks without a fuss? I know, especially for younger children, sometimes this is a challenge. Do you guys have thoughts on ways we can talk to children again about, why we're wearing masks maybe, or if they're rebelling against the mask, ways and tricks maybe we could have them wear masks more frequently? And Amani, question for you as well, to our panel.
What I would always say is make a game of it. Do it at home, get them used to it. See, okay, how long can you have your mask on? Especially for the littler ones, just so that they get used to that feeling on their face. But for the most part, it's just making it, once again, part of their routine.
Right, and I would say make sure that it's definitely, we had to try out with my kids, we had to try out a few different types of masks, especially for kids who have sensitivities to different textures of textiles. And wearing it all day can become uncomfortable. There are kids that can get some irritation behind their ears. So there are a couple of apparatuses out there where you can hook it and it hooks behind your head, or the mask that tie behind your head can make it a bit more comfortable for them.
I completely agree with your responses, and comes to mind, although my children are all grown up now, is how challenging them to do something on their own, or can you wear this by yourself, has always had good outcomes with children at a young age. Oh my goodness, you put this so fast, you're getting faster. And I've seen parents using these fun themed masks that are part of the fashion, or part of the theme, or the favorite character, whatever it is that makes it a more pleasant experience. Obviously, it's not a natural thing that our children grew up learning to do. So being unnatural, you have to make it as appealing as possible.
And I'll take the next, ask you the next question, that I'm going to toss things over to Amani for the third question. So I'm a mother of a school-age child, and I know many of the people on this call are parents of school-age children, or family of school-age children. And there is legitimate fear. I mean, our children really had a number of months off where they may have had trauma from a number of reasons, being socially isolated and being at home and quarantined. They may have had a loved one that was ill or even passed away. How can we help children, especially now that they are back in school or heading back to school soon, overcome those types of fears? And Dr. Reeves-Bright, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, I'll start there. So, I mean, you're right, we're living in unprecedented times. We are all, grown-ups, children, experience these fears. Children especially are in conflict with, I really want to go back to school and see my friends, but yet still having, those worries about becoming ill, or even bringing the illness home to a loved one who may have some sort of immunocompromised state. I think that, and parents, we have many more different scenarios. So we've got parents working from home and their child is at school, or the child may be at home and the parent is out. So it can create a pretty complicated home life. I would say it's important to sort of have this time in instead of a timeout. So time in, where you're taking 10 to 15 minutes out of your day, you're checking in with your child. How was the day? What made you anxious? How were your, was there something where you became very fearful or worried? What was that situation? I think be prepared to offer them words for their feelings, because we know sometimes they can't name some of the things that they're feeling. And help them identify some of the physical symptoms that come along with some of this anxiety and worries that they have. And then that way you can kind of help them kind of dissect the situation. And it's more, I was afraid, or I was worried when this happened. What can I try, tomorrow to be better able to handle that? So I think the better able they're and equipped they are to cope with some of these situations, they come out feeling stronger and more confident.
Dr. Marino, do you have something to add from a pediatrician standpoint?
I think the main thing is to be open, to let them know it's a safe space to express what they're feeling, and to ask them, because sometimes they may be hesitant to bring it up, and just say, how was your day? What was new? What was different? And say it's okay to express, whatever fears, or if something is confusing you, just play game, it's open grounds. And, as Dr. Reeves-Bright mentioned, you want to do it in time. So instead of an out of time, taking time out, you take time in. It's a family time to just discuss. We're all going through this together.
Now, Amani, related question, you as a, past, current wellness PTA volunteer and past school board president and longtime school board member, are you think schools are seeing this in schools, this increased fear?
I have firsthand reports from school principals of elementary age children, and obviously high school and middle school as well. But I've heard the most complaints actually from elementary principals about an increased level of anxiety amongst the very young, and fear in general. So anxiety, higher reports, fear, higher reports, psychosomatic symptoms, as we see, clinically, children starting to have a tummy ache or, headache, or complain of physical symptoms that are related to them being uncomfortable and concerned and anxious. So absolutely, they're seeing definitely higher numbers of children going to the nurse because they're not feeling well in general, not necessarily because they're sick. But they take this extremely seriously, and obviously our staffing in mental health in schools, that's a whole other issue that we advocate for. Higher staffing is not sufficient to handle a sudden increase in manifestations like that.
Amani, I want you to ask the next question of our doctor panel about parents.
And it's actually pretty related, so we're kind of going in a theme here we've put out a lot of information to our parents and members on our PTA social media about self-care that adults need to actually really pay attention to, in spite of the challenges that they're facing nowadays with concerns for their own health and health of their children and family, and juggling sometimes home, school at home, and their work that could be now totally displaced or changed. How is it important for parents and adults in the home to focus on self-care while juggling all that? Dr. Eves.
Sure, I'll start.
We'll start with you.
Yes. So we know that children model their behaviors by what they see. So whether it's, the behavior of their parent or another adult that's in their proximity. So I think now more than ever before, it's extremely important for us as parents to really be a role model for our kids. So they watch how we handle stress. They watch how we manage our emotions or don't manage them well. So even when we think they're not watching, they really are. So this is a really important time for you to be able to take care of yourself. I'm sure we've all heard the term or that phrase, put on your own mask before you, help someone else, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not you're ill-equipped really to care for someone else. So, whether it's, getting up 10 minutes before, you have to get the kids up and you've got that time to sort of gather yourself before the day starts, or it's the end of the day and kids are in bed and you have to sort of take time in for yourself and really, sip a glass of tea or do something that's calming and figure out what those things are that really help you, really that give you pleasure, that give you joy. I sometimes I'll talk to my kids even about sort of making, a list of things like what helps you in this situation. So I know that, I have my own safety plan. It's, it could be a piece of chocolate. It could be, taking a walk, or, these are all things that I use, when I'm in the moment. But, please know that this is a time where kids are really looking to see how we're managing the stress and anxiety and be open about it. That it's more normal for them to know that if you're experiencing it, it's very natural that they're having the same feelings.
Great points. And Dr. Moreno, in your practice, do you find parents overwhelmed, complaining of not being able to juggle all that? Or, what's your feeling about the importance of self-care for the adults in the home?
I definitely see that, these are unprecedented times, lots of pressures. It's all new to everyone. Trying to juggle the pressures of work and being a teacher at home in many cases as well simultaneously. It's very difficult. I mean, the main thing we need to recognize is we have to give ourselves a break and be flexible and understand that nothing will always turn out perfect. It's the best we can do. And if we pass that message along to our children, it's just to take it one day at a time. I've seen many, many parents overwhelmed, and when they take a step back, they just recognize the fact that we're okay and we'll get through this. And that's the message we want to relay.
I agree. I think it's about really giving yourself, grace that, things are very difficult and we're doing the best that we can with what we have.
No one's looking for perfect these days. As long as we're managing, we're together, and we'll will survive this. Thank you so much for this input. It's very important. And Kyle, would you like to ask the next question?
Great, and I think this is a great transition really to talk about social emotional health of children and anxiety. We actually received both a question in the chat box, and the next question that we wanted to talk about was really social emotional health of students and children. You know, how can parents and families and educators, because I've seen a number of educators in the webinar tonight, how can we continue to support our children's social emotional health? We also, as a follow-up, received a chat box question that someone had said that they had, you know, personal anxiety, and they were trying not to pass that on to their children, you know, with their fear of COVID-19 as an adult. And so let's talk a little bit about social emotional health anxiety. Are there, how can we best support children? And are there signs or things that we should watch for in our children? And what does that look like, you know, as a psychiatrist, pediatrician in a school-based setting?
Sure. I mean, we're already several weeks into the school year, so this is really a good time to reevaluate your plan. So taking a look at your routines. Are kids having difficulty in certain parts of their day? Do we need to add more time to sort of their downtime period after school? Do they need more transition from activities? We know that children really thrive on structure. But the routines that we create, they should be predictable, but they also need to be flexible, right? So we definitely want to make sure that this is a time where we can kind of take a look again and see, are there areas that we can tweak so that our kids feel a bit more less anxious, a little more well-adjusted. This is a good time to also check in with your child's teacher, see how they're doing in school. Are they having any difficulty at a particular part of the day, settling in for the day or coming back from class, and really partner with each other to make a plan, how you can best help your child really transition to this, to the adjustment of getting back to school. I would say another piece would be, be very honest with them. So when they come with questions and their fears, answer them very honestly, very directly. I think it's a good idea to talk to them about why it's important for them to be back in school. So we know school is so much more than just reading and writing and math. It provides this social emotional, it feeds our social emotional well-being, and it's a place for the kids to really connect with their peers. And it's also a place where there are lots of resources. So there's mental health services and such that really aren't as available from, when you're online. But it's a good place for kids to have many, many benefits. It may also be a safe place for kids to be while their parents are at work, or it might be a place where we know they're going to get a nutritious meal, which is so important, in our areas that have food insecurity right now. So, that's another reason that it's important to help them, transition as well as we can, back to school.
Dr. Moreno, are you seeing this as a pediatrician where children sometimes present anxiety as, for instance, a stomach ache? I know that happens with my son.
Right. So that's very, definitely can manifest itself in physical signs. Extra tiredness. We think of the things more behavioral with lack of motivation and being more introverted, but the physical signs are very realistic, and we see it very commonly. And very commonly, it's one of the early signs. And as Dr. Bright mentioned,
first name basis, so it's hard.
We want to make sure we work as a community, reach out to our resources, and let the teachers know that you're readily here to listen to any concerns they may have about their children. We are all in this together, both from the school setting. Your pediatrician is definitely a resource as well. If there's any questions, I would say as parents to reach out, because you may not know why my child continuously has this stomach ache, but if you reach further, these are things that you can be aware of and just be on top of it. That's the main thing, because everybody, is questioning everything right now, and you want to try to be in the best control of the situation you can, because, as we said, we're modeling for our children.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do a follow-up question we actually just received in the chat box that is related. And I see Amy Heisick, who is our education coordinator and teacher of the year on. Amy, if you could unmute yourself. I want to talk to the doctors and then I want to get your perspective. So thank you. We just received, a really good question. Many students with their parents don't share anything about their day. They may not share that anxiety. Dr. Reeves-Bright, Dr. Moreno, Amani, Amy, do you see this happening, and how do we get around the children who don't want to share about what's happening in their life as they get older, certainly? Dr. Moreno, do you see that in your practice as a pediatrician? And Dr. Reeves-Bright, do you see that common?
Very common. As children get older, specifically, they tend to not explain as much as what's happening in the school setting, but we see it in the young children as well. I mean, lots of times kindergartners will say, parents will ask, what have you done? Oh, nothing. They've been in school all day. So I think that's a common response from children. The main idea we're trying to get across is you want to leave open lines of communication. And just simple things, how was your day? What was good about your day? What was different about your day? Just easy ways to kind of generate a topic, a conversation with your child. And let them know, sometimes you don't want to talk, and that's okay. But if you do, I'm here. If you have a question about something, I'm here. That's the main idea. We want to leave those open lines of communication.
Dr. Reeves?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I think that, we try to probe a little bit with questions. I think in the chat, you spoke about a middle school child. So those tween years are the very, very difficult years. It's transition as they're entering, definitely into puberty. And it's times where they really want to, they're supposed to be clinging to their friends or spending more time with their friends. So it's a little more difficult to, I guess, uncomfortable for them to share. But it's really about, letting them know that you're there. Sometimes if you start to share a little bit about your day, then, they start to open up a little bit. I find that when I have them in the car, they're a captive audience. And so that's sort of the best place to, to start to look, to ask them about their day. Of course, they have to put the phone away first, and then you can do that. But yeah, it's really about them knowing that if I need you, that, that I can come to you.
And Amy, I'm sorry I put you on the spot, but I always do that. Amy's our wonderful New York State Teachers of the Year, who is on our board of directors and is a science teacher. Amy, tell us, this issue is, I know in the children you teach, and even your daughter is that same age. From an educator's perspective, how can parents kind of get this information out, and should that connection be between you and the parent a little bit more strong right now?
So my background is in high school. I teach high school kids. And what I find with a lot of my high school kids they are not necessarily comfortable talking to their parents. But if some of them have a trusted adult at school, I have kids that will come in and, I've formed good relationships with them, and they'll come in and tell me all sorts of things about, what's going on. That they'll tell the teacher, before they would sometimes tell their own parents. The other way I found, I also am a parent of a school-aged child. My daughter just started 5th grade this year. And framing or asking the questions a little bit differently also helps. So instead of saying, hey, what did you do today? Or how was your day? You ask more specific things like, what did you struggle with today? What are you proud of today? What frustrated you today? And so how did you show kindness to someone else today? Those are conversations that just framing and changing the wording that you use can get at a little bit deeper, access some of those emotions and feelings about what's going on, what frustrated you, what did you struggle with, what are you proud of, what's a success that you had today? Not just, hey, how was your day at school? Oh, it was great. What'd you do? Nothing. So just trying to ask the questions a little bit differently, encouraging them to say, you know what, you don't necessarily have to talk to me, but talk to somebody. Find an adult that you go talk to your Aunt Liz, go talk to your Uncle Joe, go talk to a teacher at school that you really, connect with and that you really like. Just as long as you have some adult that you can go to, while I would love it for it to be me, I'm okay if it's not me right now. Just know that I'm here when you want it to be, but just make sure that there's somebody that you can go talk to. Both of those things, both at the high school level with my students and then with my own daughter, just changing the conversation a little bit has helped.
I really like those questions. Amy, I was just going to say another one that I like is also, what are you looking forward to? Whether it's tomorrow or at the end of the week. So we know that they're really, future oriented, and it gives them something we all want to look forward to something. So helping them identify that, I think, is great.
And the role modeling piece again that we bring up over and over. If you start talking about your day, you're very likely to get to hear some about theirs. When you begin about sharing how your day has been, or what has been difficult for you, or what was exciting about your day, I think that children will mimic the adults. And the next question is a pretty clinical one, so we're going to switch quickly to Dr. Moreno about this one, about the importance and significance of for families to check the temperature of their children before going to school.
The idea of taking the temperature is because we all know, we've seen it on the news, one of the early signs of COVID infection is fever. But lo and behold, it's not the only symptom that we would want to be aware of, but it's one of the signs that we know we can definitely have as concrete evidence. Okay, I need to keep my child home, I need to call the pediatrician, I need to get them tested. So taking temperatures is really important. It's a way also to safeguard, just from the school setting, that the school can be aware if anyone is ill. So I think as a responsibility for parents, not only for your own children, but just the well-being overall of the school community, taking temperature is really important. When we think of symptoms we want to look for, it just leads us on to the next subject. If your child is not feeling well, even if they don't have a fever, keep them home. It's just safer all around. If they say, I'm really tired today, I just don't feel well, it's better just safeguard and keep them home. You don't want to get that call from the school nurse saying you need to come in. That's also nerve-wracking, right? We want to try to minimize anxiety here. But yes, the reason why we say take the temperatures is one of the ways we can safeguard for sure with the concrete symptom. But we want to look overall, for any other symptoms that, even symptoms of a common cold.
And that segues into the next question. In general, what are the steps that families should take to keep children healthy as we enter the flu season? I mean, flu, common cold, COVID, the symptoms are extremely similar. And in general, our immune systems and what we need to do with our bodies is pretty much the same.
Exactly. It's funny you say that. I was having a conversation with my daughter in the car, and that's what they were talking about in their school science class. How can you tell the difference? And, she said, you can't tell the difference. And that's a pretty real answer. The symptoms are very similar. Fever foremost, body aches, fatigue, very common. I don't think anyone can tell you right off the bat, this is flu, this is COVID, with those symptoms. The idea here is if your child has any of those symptoms, definitely call the pediatrician. What can we do to safeguard? The main thing is preventative health. We're entering flu season. Getting the flu vaccine is extremely important, not only for your child, but also the family members in the household. We're all sources of infection for each other generally. Aside from that, just a healthy lifestyle. Try to eat healthy, try to stay in a good state of mind, as we were discussing earlier. Trying to keep some physical activity. It's not where we were this time last year, but taking a walk outside, even generating that time as a family. Let's just spend some time together and walk around the block. That keeps some routine as well, because routine and structure is really important. It gives the child a sense of stability. So I think trying to make the best of what we have right now and the simple things. That's what it comes to. And, we want to keep everybody healthy diet, try to stay nice and physical as much as you can, and your mental well-being.
So along with mental health and remaining active as the weather gets colder, rainier, harder to be outdoors, Dr. Eaves-Bright, if you can give us some tips on how to maintain our mental health and not have winter blues, especially being that we're a lot more confined than usual.
Right. We know that the mind and body are very closely connected. Some of the things that Dr. Moreno, mentioned, again, just so important with the nutrition, and the exercise. So even if we can't get out, we can always do jumping jacks and, in the living room, or, we can make a game out of, if you're running around the couch or that sort of thing. I mean, it's going to take some creativity, but as long as we keep moving, even doing high knees, or really trying to get that cardio moving. Other ways to help sort of build our mental or psychological fortitude during this time is helping our kids to build and sometimes even create empathy, right? So it comes naturally to some kids, and some kids it has to be learned. So if you're checking in on a neighbor that may be debilitated with health problems, or can't get out at all, or dropping off groceries, or have your child write a little card for them and take it to them. So we know that when we're taking care of others, it also feeds our ability to be healthier with our mental health, and also trying to practice gratitude. So also, thinking about what we're grateful for. Gratitude journals are amazing. So and modeling that with your child. So I share a journal sometimes with my daughter. So every day I will write down one thing that I'm grateful for. I'll pass it off to her to do the same, because we know during this time that, we are, everyone's in a different situation. So if we can be thankful for some of, the things that we have in our lives, the science is there. These are things that are definitely help to boost our mental well-being.
You've mentioned some ways by which we're socializing without really socializing, as looking out for a neighbor, or picking up groceries, or leaving them a note, or and that seems to be one of the biggest challenges that parents are facing, is how to keep their child's healthy social development in a time when we're social distancing.
Right. Maintaining those connections are so important. And unfortunately, sometimes, even though we're zoomed out during the day, that's the only way that we're going to be able to connect on FaceTime with someone. But making sure that you have sort of a routine designated time. So we're calling our grandmother once a week, or things of that sort. For kids, there are some kids with chronic medical illnesses that they can't even get out to school for that connection. I know there have been a number of online support groups that have sort of popped up to help kids who are dealing with diabetes or sickle cell to really have a connection online, and but still be able to share an activity where we can all support each other, or they can all support each other through these times.
Virtual play dates, if we can call them that.
And be creative, try to make it fun. If you have a cat and you love your cat, then you're gonna, connect with someone else and bring your cat in and talk about, other things. Look at other sort of icebreakers or activities that you can do with have your child do with another child. It take some planning, some creativity on the parent side to really, make those worthwhile. But I think it's doable.
It is very important for adults, and more so for children, to remain socially connected and mingle with other children, regardless of their health challenges, obviously. So we have a couple of interesting questions in the chat that I want to address. So with the holidays coming up, and families may travel to other states for the holidays, the question is whether they should be quarantining for 2 weeks. So I'm going to start with Dr. Moreno on that.
Yes. So that's the big question. We have all these holidays coming up. I would definitely recommend following CDC guidelines. If you're visiting a state that is considered high risk, yes, I would quarantine for sure. I think it's for the safety. Once again, we're doing this all for each other. We need to look out for one another. And if you're visiting a state that is considered high risk COVID, then yes, I would definitely recommend the 14-day quarantine.
And obviously, the governor of New York constantly updates the list of states that are quarantine required states. So we can share the link to where to find that list. That is constantly changing. So you need to check it regularly when you're making your travel plans. And obviously, protecting the elderly in your family is a very important priority here, where again, we might spend the holidays together, but take precautions, you know. If the children have been in school, perhaps, you know, they're going to wear a mask or keep a little distance from grandpa and grandma. Again, we need to protect all members of the family, and especially the higher risk individuals. So our next question is to Dr. Reeves Bright, and this one is specific to higher levels of anxiety and children manifesting really severe anxiety and intensified levels of it. And what are the warning signs that parents should be looking for in order to not wait till anxiety reaches a severe level?
Right, great. I'm glad we're circling back to that question. Yeah, I would say that you know your child the best, above and beyond anyone else. So we know that there'll be there naturally some symptoms of anxiety that are going to be there with the transition. But when you start to see things that are pretty disruptive for your child or in his or her life, so if they're having a significant sleep disturbance, trouble falling asleep, really fatigued during the day, which means it gives you a key that they're not getting restful sleep at night. Changes in their eating patterns, whether they've decreased their eating habits or they're overeating. Oftentimes, that's one of the signs that we'll often see with our children is these periods of overeating and excessive snacking. If they're not engaging in things that they used to enjoy, they used to play their guitar and now they don't like to do that. Anything where you see that change in their patterns of things that typically would be part of their usual day. And of course, we're always I think there's a need to check in with your kids. And we talked about, listening to their feelings and helping them to name their feelings. I mean, we're always concerned about when these symptoms really go unchecked and untreated, can lead to more severe symptoms of depression, major anxiety disorders, things of that sort. And above all, you can always, if you have a question, connect with a healthcare professional. If it's for an initial consultation, it's definitely worthwhile to get a second opinion on what you're seeing and see if it's something that really needs to be, addressed further.
Mm-hmm. So between your school social workers, psychologists, as well as seeking your clinical pediatricians referrals if need be, you should be able to find a professional who's able to help your child
Right,
at
absolutely.
the very early signs and not wait till it's a severe anxiety situation.
Yeah. And your pediatrician's often a great resource as well because they've known your child for years and you can talk to them about what you're seeing as well.
Absolutely. Dr. Moreno, would you like to?
I would second
Sure.
exactly that. The main thing is we want to just be aware of what may be not regular for your child, what is out of the ordinary for them, and just pick up on that. And like I said, the main thing is we're working together as a community and all the resources that you have, and for children that predominantly comes from school, and recognizing, the subtle things that you want to be able to capture early on before they escalate.
And on another question from the chat, Dr. Moreno, parents are concerned that with the extended times children are spending on their Chromebooks or their tablets, whether they should be concerned about their vision health, their eye health. What would you say?
So it's funny you say that. I just brought my children to their eye doctor last week because we've all been in front of the screens so much these days. And it's aside from the school setting, we've been inside and children are just drawn to being on the screen. So that's a loaded question. So yes, from the physical standpoint, the things that are recommended is they're using the screen to keep the screen distance a good length from them so that they're not literally staring at the screen with a short distance, because that can affect their eyesight for sure. If they wear glasses, make sure that they're wearing their glasses, because if they're doing remote, they may feel, oh, I don't need to wear my glasses now because I'm not in the classroom. Still wear your glasses if you need to. Go for your regular eye checks, because sometimes you may not even realize that there's an issue. And that's an important part. It wasn't mentioned earlier, but part of the preventative health is making sure you're following up with your pediatrician on their regular well visits, and that's part of it. The second part of that question is, what do I do in terms of limiting screen time? With these unprecedented times, we need to be flexible. So I can't say you have to be as stringent as we were pre-COVID, because children are just indoors more. But things you can do is, simple things. Once again, go outside, try to find outdoors. We try to keep away from large crowds, but going to the park, maybe just flying a kite, simple things. Things that we've done. We've actually gone on Amazon and ordered all of these Legos and puzzles, so they can do something that they look forward to. They're building something. We do it together as a family. And definitely you want to generate this family time as much as you can, but you also want to limit their screen time, especially that they're on the screen, especially if they're doing remote for so many hours of the day. And they can get benefits from doing these different things. It actually stimulates them in terms of their mental capabilities with using just these Legos, and it helps their abilities to figure out in terms of cognitive abilities with the puzzles. So there's lots of things, we have to think out of the box. That's the main thing. But yes, back to the eyesight for sure. I would definitely recommend if there's a concern, have them be seen by their pediatrician just for a routine eye exam, which they can do right there in the office. And if there's any issues, they would then determine whether or not they need to see an ophthalmologist, which is an eye doctor. Limiting the screen time as much as we can, but also recognizing that we need to be a little flexible. So maybe they may be on it a little bit more than often, and you can just, follow through what they're doing on the screens. You want to make sure that it's safe screen use as well.
And aside from the visual concerns or the concerns about their eyes and their vision, there's also the concern about many hours sitting, not moving. And so we absolutely advise to instill brain breaks, we call them, and getting up, stretching, doing a little bit of a physical activity together, because we adults need the brain breaks just as much. And not having all the work together for several hours without any movement, because after a while our circulation to the brains is not as good, and we need to get moving. So concerns about long times of sitting in front of a screen are multiple concerns, and we need to be interrupting it with it could be an activity related to the work that was happening on the screen,
Right.
but at least it's an active time during their school day.
The other thing, if you want to utilize the screen as your friend, there are websites for children, healthy websites, even for families, where there's exercise and movement you can do together. So you're still using it, because you don't want to make it as taboo and then it becomes an area of conflict, right? But you can find something together. And that's a really valid point in terms of the physical activity. You can find something that is healthy for everyone to do, and they may actually enjoy it. You can say, okay, this is our family time. Let's use the screen to do this. So being creative, once again, I think is the main idea here, and being flexible.
You can project on a larger screen occasionally and be all looking at something from a farther distance. There are all kinds of tricks that we parents have to start to improvise and utilize. How are we doing with time, Kyle? Where's our conscience?
We're
If you notice in the chat box, Kyle shared.
We have a couple more questions in the chat box I just wanted to cover. We have about 10 minutes. One question that I'm going to have Amy, if you can turn your video back on and your audio. One concern, and I know you are teaching fully remote right now. And so hybrid, thank you. So Cheryl had said, it's sometimes tough because it's hard for a parent or child when their Zoom or their online or their Google Classroom is freezing a lot. So what do we do about that? How do we keep kids back on track when technology is freezing on them?
We breathe. We breathe. We breathe and we take a step back and realize that this is just not normal for everybody, and it's going to be okay. Most teachers who are doing either live or recorded lesson or live lessons are doing what we're doing. We're recording this so that if someone wasn't able to make it to the call, they can watch it after the fact. Most teachers who are doing live Zooms or live instruction with their classes are doing the same thing. So if your video freezes in the middle of a class, don't panic. You can reach out to the teacher by email and just kind of say, hey, our video froze in the middle of class. If the teacher is sort of, keeping track of who's online and who's not, they will see that your child was there. You can let them know, just email and just say, hey, here's what happened. Is there a recording of today's class so that, my son or daughter can catch up on the information or the content that they missed. And in most cases, even if it's not the same, they didn't record that specific meeting, most teachers are going to have some other resource that they can point you to be able to have your child access the same content so that they won't be behind. And just recognize there are tech glitches all over the place. We roll with punches, we do what we can, and the tech doesn't always work. And so we find workarounds wherever possible. But I would say just reach out, in a very gentle way. Teachers are a little fragile at the moment too, please believe me. But just kind of say, hey, here's what's going on. Just be honest. Video froze. We couldn't get back into the chat room, or we couldn't get back into the Zoom or the Google Meet. Is there a recording, or is there a different way for my son or daughter to access that information so that they're not behind? There isn't any teacher who is going to say, no, there's not. There's no teacher who would do that. They'll hopefully be willing to work with you and be able to provide other resources. So.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I think that just shows that right now that connection and family engagement really is so important. That connection between home and school has never been more critical. And I'm going to take this next question and a good transfer into that. Beth had asked, what are we doing for our students who are fully remote right now? They're not getting maybe similar things that they are getting in a classroom. This is a huge opportunity for PTA. Mm-hmm. So you should be having, and we'd say this all the time, you should be having routine parent-family meetings on Zoom with your school district, with your parents, having that outreach to say to your parents and families, grandparents and caregivers, because families look wonderfully diverse in New York State. What can we do to support you right now? We are a PTA. What can we do as your representatives in a school building to really bring your concerns forward to your very dedicated teachers or superintendents or principals? What do you need? Maybe, we've had great examples. Schedule this. I mean, we're happy to help. We'll happy to do it. We'll find someone to talk to you about mental health and social emotional learning for a Zoom for your unit. Have those conversations, that Amy is talking about, about anxiety, and Dr. Reeves-Bright is talking about, ways to cope with anxiety of your children. That's your role right now. The most important thing you can do in PTA right now is not fundraise. The most important thing you can do in PTA right now is advocate and support your parents and families. I think that makes sense. Amani, would you agree?
Absolutely. And I feel that the social distancing, the quarantine, the fear of the seasons restarting makes families and parents feel as if they are isolated from school and teachers, as well as from their pediatrician and healthcare providers. And we need to encourage them to understand that, on the contrary, this is a time to be well connected with these professionals that care for your child. You need to be directly connected by email to your child's teacher, schedule meetings, whether virtual or by phone, regularly, share any concerns you may have. Be a little patient. They're probably receiving a lot more emails than they have in the past. But the fact that parents are not being allowed into school buildings does not equal that parents are not invited to continue to be engaged and part of their child's education. It's a very critical time to actually be more engaged than ever. Same thing with their health care, avoiding, like Dr. Moreno said, well visits, or if there's a complaint, letting it continue to fester until it's a serious complaint. That's not a good idea. You can always schedule a telemedicine appointment with your healthcare professional. They're more than happy to say, I can treat this over the internet, or I really need you to come in for a culture or something of that sort.
No, I agree. And we are going to wrap up shortly. So I do want to go back to Dr. Reeves-Bright and Dr. Moreno, just for some final thoughts for our educators and parents and families that have joined us today. Dr. Reeves-Bright?
So I would say, it's important at this point, use the internet as a tool. So when you're looking for tips on how to, engage your child more, looking up creative games. There are also supports on the American Psychiatric Association, CHAD, Children with ADD, I think is the organization, chad.org, but they all have tips for families and in these circumstances. It's really about how to engage your child more, how to keep an eye out for those early warning signs, and when to seek help.
Dr. Moreno?
Yes, so I would also say in terms of finding out information, be careful what you read, and we want to actually provide information that's accurate. For children, the best web source to determine for physical medicine, it's aap.org, it's the American Academy of Pediatrics. There's many articles that they have in terms of COVID and the different issues related to COVID, from well-being and physical health and physical activity. So there's a wealth of resource there. And just to recognize that, children are resilient, and we serve as the role models, and just knowing that providing that hope that this will get better. And, try to learn what we can from this. The main thing is we've had this family time, which probably we'll never have again, hopefully. And, for the most part, know that you want to keep your child as healthy as you can. So as a parent, our responsibility is make sure that they're seeing their pediatrician, they're getting their flu vaccines. So you've done your part. And aside from your own child, part of your community, you want to do well for all the other children. So recognize that everyone has a responsibility here.
Yeah, and know that you're not in this alone. Please utilize your village, utilize your resources, your school, your community, your close family and friends, because that's what it will take for us to get through these times.
Amani, some last
Well,
thoughts?
Piggybacking on that, I will say we're all in this together, and know that New York State PTA and National PTA is behind you and supports you in these challenging times. Check our New York PT virtual publication regularly for articles that are health and wellness related. And also our social media. Kyle and the office staff and our volunteers are constantly putting out very reliable information and updates, and very useful information that you can definitely tap into and share with us as well. We can learn from each other during these times, and definitely our open communication and our support to each other will carry us through this together.
And I think on behalf of Jane Harshaw, our president, and our governance team, and our dear president, Lori Zaman, we just very much appreciate all of your work and the relationship that we have with Fidelis Care to bring this information forward to our parents and families. You all are PTA leaders. This work is hard and this work is tough, and there's probably things you would rather be watching, be it the town halls tonight or your favorite sitcom with your own family. But this is the work that we do. This is the mission of PTA, is advocacy and supporting families. So this is a great opportunity for us. If you are looking for more resources, go to the website, nyspta.org. On the top left corner in the website, we have a link that says COVID-19. So many of the resources our doctors talked about there are there. We have unit level resources, we have parent resources, we have links to health and wellness articles and advice. The American Academy of Pediatrics links are there, so we can connect you better. If you have specific questions, please feel free to reach out to our office. We will connect you both with your great region director, because all of you belong to one of our regions, and our region directors are fantastic voices of knowledge. We had a couple questions about recording this. This is being recorded. We are going to send this out to all of our members. It's going to go up on our website. It's going to go up on social media, and it's going to be available when you participate in the New York State PTA annual conference in November. So we are here as a resource very much for you. I want to thank all of you for joining us. Jane, I don't know if you're still on, if you want to have little parting words or if you're all set. So I'll wait for Jane to chime in and say hello or hello, goodbye if Jane is free. If not, I will say hello, goodbye on her behalf. And thank you so much. Again, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much to Fidelis.
Jane is back. Jane is right there.
Dr. Moreno, Dr. Reeves-Bright, thank you so much. And Jane is here. So Jane, I'm going to transition over to you for a quick goodbye.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to echo your comments and thanks for everyone. I think we've covered everything quite well. I'm just looking at the things in the chat that clearly this has been a very successful presentation, really has made the kind of connection and provided the information that people are really looking for. So remember that this is being recorded. So if you want to use it with your unit or within your district, or you have friends who didn't get to hear it, then they can listen in on that too. And again, I just want to thank everyone who participated and helped to bring this about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane. Thanks. You know me, I'm just putting people on the spot. So I appreciate that. And we'll have a good night, everybody. Have a nice night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.